Welcome, Jet fans, to the Jets Life podcast. I'm your host, Anthony, and a lot to get to here today on this Friday morning, to go into a little more detail and recap on that Bills versus Jets game from the weekend, a game of which the Jets were just completely outplayed by a team that has Super Bowl aspirations and is a favorite among many to go to the Super Bowl and potentially win it this year. And then we'll dive into the upcoming game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a game that Jets really need at this point to get the ship on track. A lot of concerns surrounding this coaching staff. Aaron Glenn, Tanner Angstrom, after a promising week one that resulted in a loss, they back it up with a complete disaster against the Bills to go to 0-2. And they head off over to Tampa to take on the 2-0 Buccaneers, as we already have come to familiarize ourselves with. But let's get into some of the details here. Let's start things off here with recapping that Bills game. And, I mean, it's been talked to death at this point. It was a disaster. And Josh Allen didn't even have to do anything in this game to control it. And it was one of those game situations where it's like, you felt confident with the Jets' run defense, especially after what they did versus the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first week of the season, turned the Steelers into a one-dimensional team and allowed for this Jets defense to basically try and stop Aaron Rodgers in week one through the air. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And in this game, we didn't even get the opportunity to see if that was something that would come to fruition. The Bills were able to run the ball effectively. James Cook had some significant runs. Josh Allen had a big run early in the game. I believe it was on the first drive of the game on a third down, third and short type of situation. He got a big run on that play. And that's really all it was. It was just the lack of ability for the Jets to stop the run and resulting in around 225 rushing yards. Again, Josh Allen didn't have to do anything in this game, at least with his arm that much. And the few opportunities he needed to do something with his arm, it was relatively easy. Didn't take much. This Jets secondary is a problem. It was a problem week one. It's continuing to be a problem in week two. And here we have coming into week three, a team in the Bucs that is loaded with wide receiver talent and a quarterback that knows how to make his reads, knows how to make his completions. It's going to be a tough situation here. But yeah, that's on the Jets defense side of the ball. It just was horrible week one. They couldn't do much to stop this Bills offense. The score is a lot better than what it really was. I think it was 30-10 going into the fourth quarter. So there was nothing positive about this game that you could really take out of it. Maybe you can look at the film and see that there were opportunities where wide receivers were open. Obviously, on that first drive, Justin Fields had Garrett Wilson open for what would have put the ball around midfield. Instead, he misses him, and they go 3-and-out, have to punt the football. I don't know if it makes a difference. I doubt it. But you never know. When you start a game off with a big play, sometimes, you get ahead. You saw with the Dolphins game yesterday. Dolphins are a team that should have been, destroyed against the Bills in Buffalo. They start the game off with an opening drive touchdown, and, at that point, the Bills are playing catch-up. Had a lead. Dolphins, give them credit, they fought back multiple times when they fell behind. And unfortunately, the Bills are just a powerhouse, and it got out of hand. And when I say out of hand, I mean it still was much better than the results you would expect out of Dolphins. So give them credit in that game. But offensively, after a promising game against the Pittsburgh Steelers, specifically in the run game, you would have expected, especially with the loss of Ed Oliver, and I mentioned this in our AFC shakedown that we do every Saturday. So if you haven't joined at all this season, or at least last season, definitely join. It's on Mafia Sports Reports channel. I really expected this Jets offense to kind of build on what we saw the prior week and keep things going, especially with the loss of Ed Oliver. You would have really expected that this team would have been able to take advantage of that hole on the Bills' defensive line, but instead And part of it is schematic. I think the Bills more sold out to try and stop the run to avoid that from happening for a second week in a row. And, when teams sell out and if you have a reliable quarterback back there, you got to make them pay. And Justin Fields wasn't making them pay. I think he was overall 3 of 9 in the first few quarters. It was overall a game that and maybe it's an issue with Tanner Engstrand in this particular game, not having that ability, not having that secondary option available to kind of get things moving in the right direction for this offense. Or maybe it was just, Justin Fields not reading the field properly. There was numerous occasions where Justin Fields was holding onto the football for too long. Can't have that, especially with good pass rushers on the Bills' defensive line. Bosa had a monster game in this one. At one point, they blocked him with a tight end. I think it was Mason Taylor. Not something you want to be doing. Engstrand needs to figure out what happened there. Overall, just it's not the end of the world, guys. I mean, anybody who thought this was going to be a close game, you were kind of talking yourself into something. I thought the Jets would come out with a little bit of fight, and they didn't. My prediction was a lot closer than obviously the end result ended up being. I think I predicted 33-27. I had them within a touchdown. Had the Bills score about right, but obviously the Bills let off on the gas a little bit here and there in the fourth quarter, and the Jets just never got rolling. It was unfortunate, hard to see that for this team. Again, you want to see some promise, you want to see some fight, you want to see a lot of something that was not a lot of what we've seen under Saleh, under previous head coaches. You just want to see some fight and some continuation of some success and build towards that direction. And it just unfortunately was not the case here for this team, losing against a team that really, they kind of had no shot at beating to begin with. But again, still want to see fight, still want to see something. We didn't see it last week. Dumb penalties across the board. Some scenarios where you can say, where the refs doing some favorable stuff for Josh Allen. That wasn't going to change the game. You would like to see this team play smarter. Michael Clemens, maybe, Josh Allen's going to get the call. Don't do something stupid on a third and long, give him an automatic first down that led to the first touchdown. It's just a number of dumb plays that happened. If you look at the first 3 drives as a whole, I want to say it was 13-3, 13-0, whatever the score was at that point. 3 field goal trips is a lot better than a touchdown and 2 field goals. It keeps the game within reach. And who knows, maybe at some point this offense would have turned the dial if it was a closer game. But once it got to double digits, we all kind of understood where this game was at and where it was going to go. So overall, my kind of thoughts on this game, it was a disappointment. And that's really as much as you can say. It's up to his team to rebound and get this thing steered in the right direction. You got a couple of games coming up here, especially with the Bucs banged up with injuries, that maybe you can get things straight moving forward. But yeah, let's dive right into this week's game against the Buccaneers, and let's talk into some matchups and see what we can really expect from this team moving forward. So let's start with probably one of the more critical matchups, knowing what this team has been the first couple of weeks. Obviously, again, I understand. I understand mentioning earlier that the run defense was what kind of did it in, but even when the run defense did something on third down scenarios, it was pitch and catch for Josh Allen, dicing out the secondary. There was not much there, but the secondary is weak. It's a major weakness. Talked about the first week against Rodgers, allowing 4 touchdowns. There are guys wide open in the back end, and it's communication issues. Obviously, it's lack of talent. I don't trust Brandon Stevens at all from what we've seen the first couple weeks of the season. I'm not sure what harm it does to move in a different direction with a guy like Azaria Thomas, unless they just don't feel like he's got the confidence level. Cornerback is a high confidence position. So when a player is not confident, you can tell it on the field. You can tell by the results. When a player is confident, they're usually making good breaks on the football. They're sticky with the receivers. They're able to play their coverage correctly. You could tell when a player is confident at the cornerback position versus not confident. And right now, Brandon Stevens is not confident, and it just shows. There's his side of the field is getting picked on. It's getting picked apart. Michael Carter it's been a major regression. I don't understand what's happened there. The guy went from being one of the top few nickel cornerbacks in the league to getting his major contract, and things have kind of fallen off since then. Is it a change of coaching staff? I mean, it could be. Maybe he's not used to the way he's being utilized. And then the safety position, it's just one that needs to be better. You can live in a world where you have a weak link on your defense, maybe one player that's struggling. Obviously, it's not ideal. You want everyone to kind of contribute to the maximum potential. Dane's in the chat. Appreciate it, Dane. Tell everyone to subscribe. Dane is going to have me on later on this evening. I'm not sure if I should be saying it. It's his channel. But if you're in the chat, if you're in the video, if you're watching, hop on the Dane's channel. And if you can't make it, at least hit the like button, subscribe to his channel. He's an awesome guy. He's always supporting my channel. He's even supporting the Mafia Sports channel for our weekly shakedown. It's a good time, and I know we're gonna have fun. I believe Murph will be on too. He could probably talk more to that in the chat. But yeah, it's always a good time. We had I believe it was a post-draft talk earlier in this offseason, and it was a lot of fun. So again, if you're not already, hit that like button on his channel, subscribe to his channel, and also subscribe to mine. I appreciate all the support we can get. But yeah, so continuing with this the secondary, and I don't know the easiest way of doing it. Obviously, Adams is a problem. There's problems all over that secondary. I'm not crazy about Cisco. I think he's okay when you consider the alternative options that we do have on the roster. But if you look at that's probably the biggest area of concern from this offseason is they invested some decent money into that secondary with Stevens and with Cisco. You would have expected there to be some at least adequate level starting caliber players there, but we all understood what Stevens was. He wasn't a player worth the money that we gave him. You would have hoped this coaching staff maybe would be able to kind of identify what led them to paying this guy $12 million, but it just hasn't been there. It's been unfortunate the first couple of weeks. I mean, Jets are 1-1 if Stevens is at least playing halfway decent. Maybe they put up a decent fight against the Bills, but offensively was probably the bigger concern that we had in that game, and nothing going there. But the secondary, it's going to be a tough matchup, man. Unless there's a major shakeup in that secondary, you have star wide receivers for Tampa, and I know they're balancing some injuries. And I know that I think Godwin popped up on the injury report. I know that Ibuka is on the injury report, but they have Mike Evans there too, just loaded with good talent. I would expect probably Sauce be covering Mike Evans most of this game. Would be my prediction there, but there's just talent everywhere. The slot receivers. I mean, if Carter can't be better, and I think he's also popped up on our injury report as well, if I remember right. But Carter's got to, he's got to take a step in the right direction. I mean, his first couple of weeks, poor tackling, poor angles on plays. It's one thing after another. Players in the secondary, and it's very concerning that, especially with a defensive head coach. I know he's the head coach. He's not a defensive head coach. He's the overall head coach. He's watching the whole team. But you have a former head coach as your defensive coordinator, so both these guys should be able to kind of help try and figure out what the heck is going wrong with this defense. And 2 weeks in, it hasn't been the case. This isn't a defense that was awful the last few years. I mean, I know they had a regression year last year, so obviously there was going to be some tick up required, but it's mostly the same group of players that were once an elite defense a couple of years ago. Just it seems like one player after another has regressed over the last couple of years. In some cases, it seems like it might be regression without repair. Hopefully, not the case for a guy like Michael Carter, who was a fan favorite at one point in time. We all urged and called for this guy to get a contract extension. He got it, and unfortunately, since that contract has come into his way, he just hasn't seemed like the same player that he was before the contract. But yeah, this is probably going to be the most critical match of this game. If this just secondary plays better than it has the past couple of weeks, I mean, what am I saying? I mean, even if they play better, I mean, this is just an overall talented wide receiver room that Tampa has. You try and be optimistic, but it's going to take a huge step in the right direction for this team to be better. Maybe the Jets keep it close and, they can figure something out there, but it's going to be hard for the Jets' firepower or lack thereof to match up with what Tampa has in store for them. And then continuing with the defense, I mean, you're talking about a defense that just gave up 225 rushing yards a week ago, going up against Bucky Irving. Now, I don't believe I called it up earlier, but you do have a Tampa team that's struggling with some offensive line injuries. So maybe this is an area where the Jets can attack that. But we also thought that they would be able to rush all over Buffalo with no Ed Oliver. So we were foolish for thinking that, obviously. But at some point in time, the Jets – and I feel like this is like a situation that happens year in and year out. At some point in time, the Jets do have to take advantage of teams that are facing injuries. It's got to happen at some point in time. And, you have Aaron Glenn, a former defense coordinator, Steve Wilkes, a defensive coordinator and former head coach. You would like to see them be able to identify where they can potentially gain an advantage. And I know we're out Jermaine Johnson, so unfortunately that does cause some problems there as well. But you got to take advantage of when teams are hurting in certain places, and when you're down 2 or 3 offensive line, like Tampa Bay is in this scenario. Obviously good coaching can kind of shield or avoid those issues. But this is a situation where the Jets have to take advantage of a team that's going through the injury bug a little bit, especially a one position group, and they got to take advantage of it. Apply some pressure. The thing I'll say is that Baker is a very efficient quarterback, and he gets the ball out of his hands pretty quickly. So it's going to be a major task for this Jets defensive line to try and apply pressure. Will McDonald's got to step up from a poor performance last week, especially in the run game for him. So there's got to be pressure put on Baker, and maybe a big turnover can turn this thing into something where the Jets can be in it in the fourth quarter or maybe the second half. But this defense leaves little to be optimistic about, and that's a major concern. After such a promising first week of the season, maybe those expectations of a 7-win season, 6-win season, 8-win season, maybe this is a situation where the Jets could actually exceed those expectations, and maybe hit the higher end of those expectations instead of what they normally do, and that's kind of underperform and just not show up here. Sharon, I appreciate you joining the chat again this week. Thank you. So get Clemens step on Baker's bad foot. I mean, he punched Josh Allen last week in the nose. That didn't help too much. But yeah, Clemens' role at this point is just, I mean, not saying I ever wish injuries, but that's probably the best thing Clemens could do is go out there and try and just hit the quarterback and just with his frame. But he's a player that just no impact at all on game days. It's really unfortunate. He was a player that seemed like a fun character, funny person when he was drafted, and I always remember the want to say it was the second off season, showing at the training camp with the bat with the barbed wire. That was always a lot of that was a fun 5 minutes, and then ever since then, seems like it's been one bad thing after another with that guy. Too many penalties. I feel like he has more penalties than like tackles in some of these games. It's so, and that's not even just exaggerated. I feel like that's actually the case with this guy. Well, Bucky Irving and Ibuka total over or under 200 yards. I mean, God. I mean, just judging by what we've seen the last couple of weeks from this team, I mean, is it like? I mean, I feel like you take the over in that one. I mean, Irving is a pretty solid running back, but maybe with his banged up offensive line, maybe he's held in check a little bit. And then Ibuka, I mean, he's had a pretty promising start to his career. Jeez, this is crazy. It is pretty insane to be talking about this team and talking about just horrible defensive play. The Jets have historically been a good defensive team with horrible offenses, and now we're a horrible defensive team with, who knows on offense, but hopefully something better. But yeah, all in all, defensive line, I think that's the only area to get better. Sherwood has got to be better. I mean, it's looking like another situation where the Jets gave a contract to a homegrown player and they're just falling off. I mean, it's happened so many times with this team. Go back to Mo Wilkerson, gave him a big contract after a double-digit sack season. I had high expectations for the guy. Thought that he was going to be like a 10, 15 sack guy year in and year out. And he just, after he got his contract extension, just was not the same player. You look at Michael Carter, same situation. It seems like ever since he got his contract, he's not meeting the level of expectation you would have with a bigger contract. He's underperforming his rookie contract at this point. I mean, you would expect the play he's having right now would be what you would expect out of a 5th or 6th round pick. I think he was a 5th round pick. That's what you're getting out of him now. It wasn't the same. He's not the same player that he was when, or not the same player that earned that contract. Maybe he's dealing with something. I have no clue, but it's been far too inconsistent for a couple of years now. And then Jamian Sherwood, another player, big contract, big money in the offseason, and he looks out of place. This entire defense just there's not many areas on this defense you can really point to and say, okay, that's a well-rounded player overall. Even Will McDonald, I love him as a pass rusher, hate him as a run defender. Quinton Williams probably the player that you point at and say, he can take over a game, but just haven't seen enough of it. Back in the 2022 season, he took over that Green Bay Packers game and was really the stalwart of this defense. Him and CJ Mosley being in the middle was a major force, and I think that's part of the issue. I mean, Mosley was a true leader of this defense, and I feel like ever since he's been gone, they haven't found somebody to replicate his leadership. And he may have not been the greatest player, especially towards the tail end, go battling through injuries. But when he was on the field, you felt like this defense was under control. You felt like you were going to get the best possible results on any given play because this guy knew how to communicate. He knew basically he was an alpha on this defense. And I don't know where the Jets go from here as far as looking for a player like that, but Jamian Sherwood unfortunately doesn't seem like he is that player. Quincy Williams, I don't think is that player. He's a thumper. He'll hit someone and he'll make them feel it. But Sauce isn't that player. I mean, Sauce, he's a good leader. I think he stands for the right things and wants to turn this thing around. I think he's everything you're asking for in a leader, but the Jets are really looking for someone in that huddle to kind of control the mayhem and keep it all under control as much as possible. They're missing that, and it's something that you can't really find in the middle of the season. Maybe I don't even know. Like, is there a player? And I'm happy to have anyone in the chat kind of chime in on this one too. Is there a particular player that you look at on this defense and you say that guy can really get the best out of this whole entire unit? And I just don't know who that player is. Unfortunately, there was a period of time where you had guys like JFM, CJ Mosley, I mentioned earlier, just players that stood for the right things, did their business, and were anchors for this defense. Well, those players aren't there anymore, and Jets need to figure out a way to kind of find that in somebody, because maybe the Steelers debacle doesn't happen. Maybe they at some point someone gets in someone's face and says, "All right, you can't be letting this shit happen anymore." But yeah, it's a major concern for this defense. I don't see this week being a week to get right for this defense. And be real, I don't see it with the Dolphins either. If the Dolphins come out there with the passing attack like they did yesterday, and I know it wasn't. I know Tua didn't have a 300-yard game. I don't even think he had a 200-yard game. I don't remember the stats, but Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, those guys going up against this secondary, they did well against us when they were going up against DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. Now you got Sauce and Brandon Stevens, maybe Azariah Thomas. I just don't know. Waddle came up clutch yesterday in a few big critical situations. If you're picking over-unders for next week, I would urge you to pick the overs on some of these receivers, because this Jets defense is scary to watch, and not the scary that we're used to as Jet fans. Let's move over to the offensive side of the ball and talk about some of the matchups on that side. The Jets' offensive line obviously struggled a bit last week, particularly in the run game. I think it almost seemed like the Jets had a game plan of the Bills got destroyed in the run last week. Let's hammer in the run game. Let's run behind this offensive line, and let's have a day. Let's control the clock. Let's control the entire game with our running game, and we'll see what happens. Well, unfortunately, the Bills didn't get that message, because Bills said, F that. We have a good defense. We have a defensive-minded head coach. We're not going to let the same mistakes from the previous week linger into the following week. And we're not going to let the Jets beat us. Let's be real. A lot of things they would rather do on a Sunday afternoon than let the Jets defense or the Jets offensive line or Jets team as a whole at any point make it a competition here for a team that has Super Bowl aspirations. Well, the Jets have to get that right. I don't fault 100% of what the Jets offensive line did last week to, I don't think this offensive line wasn't prepared. I think the more of the issue was the Bills are just putting 7-8 guys in the box on early downs and making it a priority to stop the run first and let's let Justin Fields beat us. And Justin Fields is inaccurate on Sunday. Missed a couple throws. Was late on a couple of reads. Late in the second quarter, I think there was a play with Isaiah Davis in the flat. He hits him. You're talking about probably a good 20, 30-yard gain, get us in field goal range with plenty of time to go, and maybe go into the half with a touchdown score. He was off on Sunday, and it's something you're going to expect out of Fields. That's kind of been his MO throughout his career. You just think you would just like to hope and see that maybe with a good offensive staff and a good offensive line that you would get more of the Fields we saw in 2022. A guy that got MVP votes that year. I think he got a 5th place MVP vote, which isn't much, but it's still something for a guy that had an outstanding year on the ground. Would have liked to see that going into the season, but obviously going down with the injury doesn't help at this point with a concussion. Tyrod Taylor's in there. and he's a veteran player. I like Tyrod Taylor. I think when he's on the field, I think you're getting, adequate quarterback play. You're not getting a guy that's going to throw for 300, 400 yards a game, but you're going to get someone who's going to make good decisions. He's going to throw a couple deep balls down the field, and he does have a good deep ball, so it's something that maybe that can be an X factor in this game. Hit a couple deep shots, and you're talking about shorter fields to work with. Get a long touchdown. Got some speedsters on the outside with Garrett and Aaron Smith. Maybe all it takes just a couple deep shots and get this team back into it. But there's just so much negative going into this game that you just got to be aware of with this team. Let the chat here for a second here. Got a couple in here. I think the season will be like a roller coaster. We'll end up with 7 or 9 wins. What are you thinking? That's kind of where I was. I mean, I was more on the 7-win frame of mind going into the season. This defense has to get better. The secondary has to get better. And it's hard to envision this team getting to 7 or 9 wins unless this defense improves drastically. Can't expect what we got out of the first week of the season out of this offense week in and week out until they prove us otherwise. My avenue before the season started to 7-9 wins was going to be that they were going to have to play good defense, and a few of the games they would control the clock, control the momentum of the game with Justin Fields' legs, running the football, this offensive line, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that whole entire thought process has changed now because this defense hasn't proved to us that they can stop anything. So I'm not going to say that, they're bottom of the barrel. At some point in time, you would like to think a defensive-minded head coach can get this thing corrected, especially a guy like Aaron Glenn. He was with the Lions for a few years, and there were periods of time where he had players out there that shouldn't even been on an NFL roster, and he was able to put some decent film up there. He wasn't always kind of given the talent that maybe the offensive side of the ball was getting at Lions. I mean, he did get Aiden Hutchinson in the draft and second overall pick, but I feel like he was for more scenarios than others. I think he was given less talent and got more out of that talent while he was at the Lions. And I think that's a big reason why a lot of teams interviewed him over the last couple of years to be a head coach, because for that exact reason, you're trying to get a guy that's going to get the most out of his players. Whether or not they're highly gifted players or not. And unfortunately, to this point, you've seen a couple of players that have either stayed at their norms or, have diminished in value. When you look at guys like Michael Carter, 7-9 wins. I think at some point things get corrected. I still think we'll find our way to 7 wins. 9 wins would be outstanding. I just don't see it at this point in time. But who knows? But yeah, I'm still in the 7-win. I'm probably more in the 5 to 7 win range now. I think going into the season, I was more like, maybe we get 6 to 8 wins. I think I'm kind of trending a little bit backwards based on what I've seen the first two weeks of the season. But who knows? NFL's a crazy game. Teams get things corrected. Teams in September are not always what they are in November. And as the season progresses, are the Jets a team that moves in the right direction, or do they continue to fall where they're at right now? I'd like to hope that first year in the head coach, first year in the system, things get better before they get worse. Tyrod is 2-0 against Tampa. Yeah. I have to look at those teams that he was playing on and against. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to have a guy that's beaten another team before. Maybe it's something in the water, but I don't even know. Do we know, I have to look at Tyrod's. Let me look it up here. 1 second here. Yes, he has 2-0. He played him once in 2017 as a Bills quarterback. I think that was under McDermott's first year there, if I remember right. So obviously team in transition. I think the Bills did make the playoffs that year. So, and the Bucs, I'm not sure where they were at that point in time, but the Bucs, I think, I recall not being the greatest around that period of time. And then he has beaten them. At least for right now, the 2017 game is the only one that's popping up for me. But again, I mean, I'd love for it to be 3-0 this week. Let's see what happens. But I don't know. I think the Jets' success or failures against the Buccaneers has more to do with the defense than the offense. Obviously, the offense does need to be better than it was last week. But I struggle to find a situation where this defense does enough to not get embarrassed against a strong receiving group in the Buccaneers passing game. But we've seen some crazy stuff before. I recall the season we played the Eagles where Reed was out with an injury, Sauce was out with the injury. I forget. No, Carter did play because I remember he was he had a big play in that game where he was like chasing Justin Fields down. I think it was like one of the last plays of the game. But everyone in their right mind thought the Eagles were going to destroy the Jets in that game, especially with all the missing their top two guys. You figured A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith were going to have field days against this Jets defense. It didn't happen that day. I just think that season you were talking about a unit that was a few years into a new staff. I mean, and we got to all remember too, as bad as outstanding as the Jets defense was under Robert Saleh, we need to all remember that first season under Saleh, this defense was horrible. This defense was abysmal. They also had nothing as far as talent on the defense at that point in time, so that's a little bit of a concern here that Glenn and Wilkes have what you would consider to be a little bit more talent than what Saleh inherited at the time. But yeah, when you have a bad secondary, and I've been calling for this for so long. I've been calling for this team to do something about the safety position. How do you go from drafting two safeties in back-to-back rounds when they drafted Jamal Adams and Marcus May in 2015, I think it was, to just basically ignoring the position ever since? And obviously things are showing. They haven't invested in that position. They had Whitehead there for a couple of years, and I thought he was – I thought he got a lot of flack, but I think he was still like a decent safety. I think I would much rather have him here today than not have him. But was he like an elite top of the line safety? No, he wasn't. Had a few good games. Had that 3 interception game against the Bills where we needed it. That opening game of the 2023 season. 23, yeah. Opening game of the 2023 season, had that 3 interception game. That was huge for us. I mean, we needed every one of those interceptions. And, the Jets have just ignored that position. I know that they threw some money at Cisco this offseason, but again, I just while I like Cisco as an option at safety, I don't think he's your top or should be your top safety week in and week out. There's rotational players that fill a role and do things right. He's one of those kind of players. I said the same thing about Ashton Davis a few weeks, or I think it was a couple months ago. I think in our AFC Shakedown show, a couple of Dolphin guys were wondering what to expect out of Ashton Davis, and I told him exactly that. He's not a horrible player, but he fills a role, and keep him at that role, and you're going to be happy with the results to some extent. He's going to drive you crazy at times. Most players, have those moments, but for the most part, just let him do what he needs to do, and you'll be happy with the results. And that's kind of how I expect Cisco. That's kind of the way I looked at Adams, although Adams wasn't at Tony Adams I'm talking about. I know I brought up Jamal Adams earlier, but I was talking more about the draft a few years back. That's kind of what you expected out of Adams too. Although I wasn't as, high on Adams going into the season. Malachi Moore, same situation. I kind of expected him to have a role in this defense and work his way through. The secondary is just it's a major concern. It's so unfortunate because I do believe that secondary problems can be resolved with a strong defensive line, but the Jets defensive line is taking hit after hit too. You have Jermaine Johnson not even suiting up this week. He's going to be out for the Buccaneers game. Has been reported. When you have your top defensive lineman going out, I believed that the Jets secondary problem wasn't as drastic because if it's just communication problems, those things will tend to get corrected as the season progresses, and defensive line being strong will allow for that secondary to kind of work its way into its role. But unfortunately, doesn't seem like it's moving in that direction. But this Jets offensive line, going back to what I was talking about earlier, it just has to be better. The pass blocking was pretty good last week. Let's keep that moving in the right direction. Let's make sure that we're keeping an eye on their top-end pass rushers. Let's not allow Hassan Reddick to have his revenge tour game against this team. Just offensive line, continue what you did against Steelers and don't continue what you did against the Bills. Their performance against the Bills wasn't awful. There were plenty of opportunities for Justin Fields with the ball in his hands, plenty of time to throw. And instead of throwing the football, he kind of held on to it, took sacks, took too many. In some cases, fumbling the football. Just can't have that. This team is not a team that can withstand turnovers, poor offensive play, and poor defense. They're just not there. It's hard to win football games, especially against powerhouse teams like the Bills, when you turn the football over and, not making stops on defense. Teams like the Bills, they can do it. You saw it yesterday. They allowed Miami to march down the field, and Miami was able to punch it in. Give them credit. A few times they did punch it into the end zone, but late in the game, another situation where it's hard to methodically find your way down the field. And this is go back to what Saleh preached for so many times. Play your technique, play your reps. Every single every play, every drive, whatever, they're gonna work their way down the field. But it is hard to score touchdowns in this league when you have to run 10 to 13 plays a drive. It's not sustainable. At some point in time, the quarterback's gonna get annoyed. At some point in time, a receiver is gonna drop a pass. Something's gonna happen down the road at some point in time that is gonna stop that drive from moving forward. And that's just law of averages. That's how it works out. Someone's gonna make a drop. Someone's gonna make a mistake. That's the NFL. And someone's going to make a play on the defense, too. You can't forget that, too. As bad as defense is, at some point, someone's going to make a play, too, when you're having drives like that. But when you're getting to situations where just teams are able to just gash you for big play after big play, that's the most upsetting thing, I think, as a Jet fan, is that they need the defense is so far behind. Offense, we saw a glimmer of hope, followed by a week of disaster. Hopefully that what we saw in the first week is more of what we're going to see the rest of the way. And I think against Tampa gives us our first true opportunity to see, hey, we're not going up against a Super Bowl caliber team. So I'll get into the game X factors of who I expect to be the X factors in this week's game on offense and on defense. So I will start with the group, and I don't have the banner ready. Hold on one second. Okay, we'll start with the defensive X factor here because I went across this and just abused, I feel, the entire Jets defense. And it's so hard in this game to really kind of identify what the Jets can do to gain an advantage on the Bucs. But I mentioned it earlier, the Bucs Bucs offensive line is banged up with some injuries. So I'm gonna say from a defensive standpoint, the player that the Jets need to step up in this game is going to be Quinnen Williams. I feel like if Quinnen Williams can play his game and, for the Jets defense to even have a shot, this can't be like, oh, Quinnen Williams had a good game today. It would literally have to be like a mimic of what we saw out of Quinnen Williams in that Packers game a few years back. I think it was in 2022. I think I referenced it earlier in this call too. But yeah, we'd have to see that level of Quinnen Williams, and obviously, for him to be able to do that, your secondary and your defense needs to be covering, which is going to be a major concern. But we do need him to be a freak on that defensive line, and control his game from the trenches. If we can do that, maybe. And I say making the Bucs one-dimensional, but that's also like can't have that either. This Buccaneers team will carve us up, but you know what? I mean, you're not going to win games by making teams, be able to run the football and pass the football in you. So you got to make them one-dimensional. Juwan Briggs has been a pretty good find for Mucci so far this season. He's a guy that's been making plays in the run game, so maybe that's the avenue. Just keep things going in the right direction on the defensive line. Stop the run this week, and we saw him get destroyed by the Bills, but again, that was because the Bills were able to run the ball at will. Maybe you can get this game one-dimensional, and someone in the secondary has to step up. Is Michael Carter get back to form? I don't know. Is there a major turnover that we're not seeing? Is there a shakeup in the secondary? That's the biggest thing I look at here. Are the Jets going to do something on the back end of this defense to get this thing corrected? Are they going to bench Brandon Stevens? I don't understand the accountability. Like, the thing gets me so confused, and obviously I was a huge proponent to Aaron Glenn cutting Xavier Gibson after the first game. The fumble cost us the game, but there were other things in that game that cost us the game as well. There were a couple penalties in that game that I recall. There was the poor coverage by Brandon Stevens. Like, there were a few things in this game that cost us to lose in week 1. Brandon Stevens is on 2 weeks now of playing terrible coverage. And at some point in time, you'd like to see the accountability reach. And I know you can't cut every player. You're not going to bench every player because at some point in time, someone's got to play. But when a player is playing this poorly, and the same goes for Michael Clemens, when you're doing such idiotic things on a week-to-week basis, at some point in time, defense has to get better. But yeah, defensive X factor, has to be Quinnen Williams. This Jets defensive line just has to be better. And this secondary needs to take advantage of a strong defensive line, hopefully in this game, that can result in maybe taking the ball away a couple of times, turn this game around. The NFL is all about momentum. If you get good momentum, all of a sudden things start working out, things look different. But right now, I don't know if there's much confidence in the back end of this defense that they believe they can stop anybody playing receiver. So fingers crossed that's the case here. Quinnen Williams, a big game this week to, get things right for this defense. I do like him come to the podium and talking about the pact him and the defensive line made, or him and the defense made, that they'll never allow another guy to do what the Bills did. But, the Bills ran for 225 yards on you guys. So Bucs run for 200 yards, you're in a better situation because you didn't let them run for 225. Obviously, I understand what he was trying to say at the podium, but everything's got to get better on this defense. It's all got to get better. Before I went to the offensive X factors, anybody in the comments, feel free to leave something. I'll happy to chime in on any of your thoughts. Also, if you haven't already, please hit the like button on this channel. Helps me grow. Also, if you haven't already as well, hit that subscribe button. Subscribe to the channel. Keep my channel growing as much as possible. I appreciate all the support. And I appreciate everyone in the chat. You guys are awesome again for another week here, and appreciate you guys all joining in. And I mentioned it earlier, but Dane has been in the chat for this show. Feels like on a regular basis. I will be on his channel later on this evening, and we will be talking some Jet stuff. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button to his channel as well, and join us later on this evening. We'll be live streaming later on today. Gyro, an upset Sunday and a victory against Miami. Our season looks brighter at 2-2. I mean, the NFL is a crazy thing, right? I mean, there's plenty of teams start off 0-2, turn things around. Plenty of teams start 2-0 and fall apart. Are the Jets that team? I'd love to think so. Again, I have to see something different. I have to see something better. What we saw the first 2 weeks of the season from a defensive standpoint is just not sustainable. You got two good receiving rooms coming up between the Buccaneers and Dolphins. I don't have the most faith. I'm sorry to be pessimistic. I'm sorry if I'm being that way. For everyone in the chat, I do apologize, but it's so hard to watch what we saw the first couple of weeks of the season and believe that all of a sudden the defense is going to turn around and be able to stop. Let's be real. I mean, offenses that aren't outstandingly great, but Buccaneers have an efficient offense. They have an offense that scores points. Baker's efficient with the football, makes smart decisions, makes big plays. I mean, he's gonna dive for first downs. He's gonna do whatever he can to win this football game at home. I think it's their home opener too. So a lot of things working against the Jets in this game, and then the Miami game coming up. Dolphins just had a strong performance against a team that just destroyed us in their stadium. But again, NFL's a week-to-week league. Dolphins can have that strong performance, come out and play us, and get embarrassed. We've seen it so many times happen in this league, but we'll see what happens. Great show, Ant. Dane, appreciate you. Raphael Courtright. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Looks like how it's pronounced. YouTube Thumb 2 has 5 turnovers in 3 games, 4 interceptions, 1 lost fumble. Will Justin Fields play Monday night? I believe Tyrod Taylor gives the Jets a better chance to win, in my opinion. So we'll see if Justin Fields plays on Monday night. He's in a concussion protocol. Obviously, he's out this week. We'll see what Tyrod Taylor. I mean, I don't think the Jets are out because of Tyrod Taylor playing. It's not that type of situation. I feel like the Jets are in a much better situation from a backup quarterback standpoint than they've been in years past. That's one thing I will say. So I think he gives them a better chance to win the game. If he's making his throws, making his reads, I think he just gives the Jets a different dimension. I think he can make those. And not saying Justin Fields can't, but Tyrod Taylor's had a history of, being what he is. He's got gets the ball down the field. He can hit your playmakers downfield. He's going to stretch the football field a little bit, which in essence can help this offensive line a little bit more, because if you're stretching the field, you're forcing teams to respect the deep pass and opens things up in the running game. I wouldn't be shocked if Tyrod Taylor has a good performance this week and the Jets just stick with him for the Miami game, because we just saw a bad version of Justin Fields in week 2. But I do believe if Justin Fields is fit to play and the Jets feel like he's, ready to roll, I do think he plays against the Dolphins. But I mean, I'm not against if we get a strong performance out of Tyrod Taylor and, dare I say, a win, for the Jets to kind of continue riding the hot hand. That would be the direction I would go, but we'll see. But yeah, that'll be the situation there. So with 2 as interceptions, you play the Bills defense, and then against the Colts, I think the Dolphins just got shell shocked. I think they didn't know where the heck they were. They had to play catch up ball, and I don't think Tua Tua can really do that at this point. He's not the player that kind of like shot out of a cannon Mike McDaniel's first year. When they had that game against the Ravens, they were down, I think, 2 scores at that point. They will come back, take a lead, and eventually win. I believe they won that game. The 70-point game, et cetera. He's taken a step back for sure. He's still decent, but he's shown proof in his career that late in the game, he's going to make a mistake, especially in tight games, especially on the road, cold weather, et cetera, et cetera. And I know we'll be down in Miami for that game, but there's a lot of trends in Tua's game that happen and creep their head way too often that it seems like that might be him. And I think that's definitely the case here. But the point here, we'll see with Tyrod. Let's get through the Sunday's game, and once we get through there, let's see what we got to do from there. Is my thoughts. But take it one game at a time. If he plays horribly, then and Justin Fields can't play, it might be a situation where you even kind of consider other options at quarterback. I don't think the Jets will do that, but we'll see. Dolphins defense is allowed 33 points to the Colts, 33 points versus New England, and 31 points to the Bills. Weaver needs to open up a cat house. Everyone is scoring. Jeez. Yeah. Dolphins defense is a lot of points. It is alarming on that aspect. But my concern is I don't know what to believe with the Jets. Is the week one team the true Jets offense, or is the week 2 team the true Jets offense, or they find themselves somewhere in the middle? I think obviously the correct answer is they're somewhere in the middle, but how close to whichever spectrum are we going to see this team kind of as the season progresses? If they're a team that is closer to what we saw in week 1, and I gotta give a little bit here that it was Engstrand's first game. He did come out there. He did show some good stuff. Week 2, first game seeing a defense that has actually game planned for what they've seen on film. So you got to kind of take those into consideration. Now he has an opportunity to say, okay, this is how teams are preparing for me and my play calling. So I need to adjust. And that's part of the issue with going with a younger guy as your OC, is that he doesn't know what he doesn't know, but now he's starting to learn. And you would like to see that maybe, last week was a smack in the mouth and a major learning experience, and maybe things get better as a play caller moving forward. But there's something there. There were players open if you watch the film, and I know who wants to watch that film a second time, but I'm a lunatic like that, and I did watch the game, the all 22 for this game, and there were situations where it's like you had to scream at TV and say, "What the heck are you doing?" You had guys wide open down the field, throw the damn football. And Tyrod, I think, is the perfect quarterback for the type of situation. He will not shy away from throwing the football downfield, and if there's guys open, he's going to look for him. He's going to hit him. So let's hope for the best. But yeah, Dolphins defense doesn't scare me. It's more the offense that I have a little bit of a concern with, and how this defense can really stop them. Sharon, yeah, that's probably like most Jetsian thing to happen is we find ourselves in a quarterback situation three weeks into Aaron Glenn's tenure. Brandon Stevens begins to shine in week 3. Zachary, I hope you're right. I don't know. The Ravens let him walk out, and that says a lot. They love their corners over there, and they just let him walk out. Malik, no rebounding. Listen, it's the title of my broadcast here, but if you've chimed in at all, I don't have the most confidence, unfortunately. This Jets defense has struggled the first 2 weeks of the season. And I can't see a way of rebounding from that against a team that has a really good receiving room, called elite at multiple levels. Evans, Godwin, Ibuka versus Stevens, Carter, and Sauce. I believe whoever Sauce is covering, you'd like to believe he'd be able to have some control over. But the other two guys, they've got to get better than what I've seen first 2 weeks. And it's got to get better. Telegraph tool will give game away to Jets. Dolphins suck on primetime games. All these are facts. Rafael, you're given nothing but facts in all of your comments. I agree with everything. Again, I just need to see something better out of this defense. It's hard for me to say that this defense is gonna, unless the Jets are winning 41 to 33. Which you also talked about the Dolphins defense earlier. Unless something like that is happening, I have concerns. Listen, things got to get better, right? I mean, it can't get much worse on the defense side of the ball. So the only way from here is up, right? And we'll see what happens. How much of struggles do you think we can relate to players needing time to figure out the new scheme and responsibilities and how to counter different looks, etc.? First, our personnel just stinks. I'd say Brandon Stevens stinks. I'd say Tony Adams stinks. I'd say a lot of the guys on this defensive line are pretty good. I'd like to think Quincy Williams and Jamin Sherwood still know how to play football. So I think it is more the scheme, but you have guys playing safety that probably shouldn't be there, and you have a guy playing corner who probably shouldn't be playing. You're talking about 3 of your back 5 that are for sure, liabilities back there. When you have 3 guys in your back end of your defense in a passing league, it's not a recipe for success. So I think it's a little bit of both. Maybe the front 7 gets some improvement. Maybe Carter gets, Carter was a great player before his contract. So again, a player that I'd like to think could be better. With Stevens, it was just you got what you paid for, and you got the player that you got the player that we knew he was, and you just paid a premium for him for whatever reason, and it's starting to backfire. But with Carter, it's like he just doesn't look like the same player. I don't know if he's battling something or whatever have you, but I would point it more towards the scheme might just be something this team has to familiarize themselves with. This is a team that didn't blitz at all, and now you have Aaron Glenn, who's a guy that likes to blitz. Steve Wilkes, a guy that likes to blitz. So it's a completely different mindset. So I think that has something to do with it a lot. But again, I do think there's some personnel issues as well that needs to be corrected. But obviously, not much you could do midseason unless you shake things up with a change of corner. Dolphins can't stop the run. Breece Hall should eat unless Jets give up on the run game. All facts, man. Gotta give you props. Appreciate you in the chat. Rafael, hit that like button, subscribe, and join the channel for any time you see us on, because you're doing nothing but providing facts. All this is right, and it all points to the Jets should be able to go pound for pound with the Dolphins and beat them. But again, I keep going back to, is this defense going to stop Dolphins receivers? And it's not just Jets versus Tua. It's those receivers that I'm the most concerned with, is who's covering these guys. Who's covering Jalen Waddle, who had a big game yesterday from the standpoint of a couple fourth down. He had the 4th down reception, a couple of 3rd down receptions, a touchdown catch. Yeah, he didn't have glowing stats, but I don't think anybody on the Dolphins did. But in critical moments, Tua went to Jalen Waddle to get the 1st down. Sauce cannot cover Tyreek and Jalen Waddle in this game. You can cover one of them, but when when teams are looking for the top corner and they see Sauce on one side, they're looking for where's the other guy? Who's he covering? Okay, I'm looking for that guy. I'm going to scheme a way of getting him open. That's my concern. I don't think Dolphins are here and the Jets are down here. I don't think that's the case. I think it's the Dolphins receivers are up here and the Jets secondary is way down here. That's the biggest, if we want to talk moving forward, that's probably the biggest X factor going into next week is how the heck is this Jets secondary going to stop the Dolphins receivers and pass catchers? All right. I gave my defensive X factor ready. If you joined a little late, Quinton Williams, I feel like, is the player that needs to have a big game this week in order for this Jets. Obviously, the secondary needs to be better, but I'm not going to sit here and say I want Brandon Stevens to be the X factor because he's been a non-factor in the first couple weeks. But if you're talking about a player that could really kind of take advantage of what's in front of him, the Bucs offensive line is going through injuries, and your top defensive lineman, interior-wise, is Quinton Williams. So expecting him to make a big push in this game, and maybe his pressure, maybe he can do enough to turn this game around. We've seen him do it in the past. Haven't seen him do it for a little while. Maybe this is the game where he gets things corrected, or is that impact player that we need. On the offensive side of the ball, X factor wise, I gotta go with Tyrod Taylor in this game. Listen, veteran guy playing his first game as a starter for the Jets. We've seen him throughout his career, and even as recently as with the Giants. And the Giants are just as much of a dumpster fire as the Jets are. But we've seen him as recently as with the Giants go in there and kind of infuse a different level of confidence in the offense. The Jets have some speedsters on this team. They have some playmakers, and I look at a guy like Aaron Smith as a guy that could benefit from Tyrod Taylor, and here's the reason why. In practices, usually the way things line up is you got your starting offense, starting offensive line, starting receivers. So Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields are getting a lot of reps one-on-one. They're connecting the whole time, blah, blah, blah. Josh Reynolds, the guys you would expect to be your top receivers going into the season are usually lining up with Justin Fields. When Tyrod Taylor comes in there, and yes, he is getting reps with Garrett Wilson. They are all getting reps, but he is getting more reps with that next tier of players. He's getting reps with guys like Lazard, Arian Smith, a rookie who is not expected to have a major role with the starting offense because he's a fourth or fifth round pick, whatever round the Jets drafted him. So he's getting more reps with the backup unit because he's not expected to factor into live games as instantly as other players. So Tyrod Taylor is out there getting a lot of reps with the speedster. Expect Arian Smith with Tyrod Taylor there to get a little bit of uptick. Now, I'm not expecting Arian Smith to get 150 yards receiving or anything crazy like that, but I expect at some point in time they're going to make a deep shot here, and Arian Smith with his speed is going to be down the field. Tyrod Taylor is going to take the shot. He's familiar with this guy. He's familiar with how to get on the ball, where he likes it, et cetera, et cetera. And that could be a situation that the Jets can take advantage of or can benefit of having Tyrod Taylor playing quarterback. So defensive X factor, Quinton Williams. Offensive X factor, I'm going to go with Tyrod Taylor and his ability to stretch the field. That'll open things up for the running game, and maybe, just maybe, this Jets offense can string together a few positive drives. Because as we all know, all you got to do in the NFL is get that game into the fourth quarter, and then it comes down to, which chess pieces win their matchups. And the Jets do have some chess pieces, but again, I think it still comes down to the fact that the firepower on the Buccaneers is just a little bit too much that the Jets may be able to handle. Alrighty. So we go into this game against the Bucs, and now we're up for our predictions. And what I'm going to say here is think a few guys in the chat. Raphael had some good points there with his takes on stuff. I have like a renowned trust in the Jets' abilities here, but all joking aside, I do expect for the Jets to play better. I do expect things to be better than it was last week. I think the offense gets a little bit of an uptick from what we had the week prior. I think you're getting something better out of Tyrod Taylor than what we did in Justin Fields. So, and I do think this defense maybe improves a bit. I'm not saying they're gonna all of a sudden hold Tampa Bay to 17 points. That's not happening. But I will go in here and say that the Jets keep them within the mid-20s. I'm going to go Tampa to win this game 27-21. Jets keep it within a touchdown. I believe the spread's around 7. So they're right there with what the spread is. But it can easily be a game that's 27-17, 27-14. But I'll be optimistic here as far as like Jets keeping it close. And then again, who really knows? If the Jets can keep this game that close, all it takes to play here, play there, and who knows? So that's my prediction. 27-21, Tampa Bay improves to 3-0. Jets go down to 0-3. And unfortunately, it just seems like we're in for a long season. But I think this is a situation where you really just got to look at this team and just this is what we want to see them doing. Obviously, we want to see them winning. And obviously, that's the whole point of this whole thing. That's why you're a fan. You want to see this team win. But you really got to walk before you can run. And the Jets aren't even crawling yet. So one thing at a time, one step at a time. Let's go on the road with this team. Let's get some benefit. Let's work better. Let's see if this coaching staff took week 2 as a wake-up call of things that need to change, things that need to improve, things we got to get better at. And let's actually get better at those things. And, let's fight against a team that has won their division for the last 3 years. I think Tampa's won it, or last 2 years, whatever it's been. Let's go into Tampa and let's put up a fight. Let's have some fun, like what we did in week 1 against the Steelers. Let's have a fun Sunday. I hated losing that first week, but I had some fun watching an offense that put up some points. I had some fun watching a game that went down to the last 2 minutes of the game with an opportunity to go down the field and win the game. Unfortunately, we didn't, but I had fun. A lot of Jet fans did. We were all pretty optimistic leaving that game. But you go head-to-head with a Super Bowl favorite and you smash in the mouth, and things change. But let's see. This is another team that has playoff aspirations, a team that's expected to, win their division for however many consecutive year. Let's put up a fight and let's see what happens. I'm all for the excitement of maybe turning a corner. You may not turn the whole thing around, but let's turn a corner here. Let's show that we are what we expected we were going to be in week 1, or what we showed in week 1. Let's show that, and let's not go in there and just get abused again for the second week in a row. Because then you are talking about a situation where it's same old Jets type of shit. And I'm tired of same old Jets. I want something different. I want something new. And I know all you guys do too. So let's see how this goes. But I'm going Tampa 27, Jets 21. That's a hard-fought battle. And maybe, just maybe, Tyrod Taylor's got something in him to flip that script and put us in a better direction. Guys, appreciate you joining the chat, joining the show. Everyone who hasn't already, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel. It's been loads of fun. Appreciate you guys all joining. Signing out now. Let's go Jets.